Hello friends, my name is Alex and welcome to my booktube channel. Happy March. I hope that you all are doing super well. We are hopefully coming up on spring, but it is time for a February wrap-up for me to talk about all of the books that I ended up reading in the month of February, which despite a reading slump, it ended up being 8 books that I read. So I am going to chat with you guys about those today. Friends, if I am a bit sassy, if I am a bit snarky in this video, I have just now from finishing House of Sky and Breath, which you will not be hearing about in this video because it's March. I finished it in March, but I did record my reaction to the ending. Let me know if you ever want to see that. I'm not sure if I'm going to share it or not, but we're thinking about it. But anyways, if I have a bit of an attitude in this video, it's because I've just finished that book and I'm like still thinking about it, but also trying to think about these books and tell you about them. So let's get into these 8 books that I read in February and chat about, mood reading, reading slumps, all that along the way. If you watched my January wrap up, I got into a Shadowhunters phase in January and read the entire The Infernal Devices series in January, as well as starting The Last Hours. I read Chain of Gold at the end of January, so I talked about that in my last video. I did give that a 5 stars. So I started February with Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This is the 2nd book in the Last Hours trilogy. This is the series that follows the Infernal Devices and follows the children of those main characters in turn of the century 1900s at the London Shadowhunter Institute as they are battling some demons. As always, some things are going on in Downworld. We have a whole new group of characters in this series that I really enjoy, and the 2nd book was maybe my favorite of the 3. The first and the 2nd one for sure are my favorites. I also gave this one a 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I still don't think that this series tops the Infernal Devices for me. That is like elite. It's so good. Those characters, those relationships, I literally just can't. But these are also so good. I really enjoyed watching these friendships continue to develop throughout this book. The plot is a little iffy in this series, I'm not gonna lie. We have some demon stuff going on, but it's a little fuzzy. Now I'm getting confused about like which plot elements happened in which of the 3 books because I completely binged these back to back. So I'm not gonna talk specifics, but I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love Matthew is my favorite character. So might be controversial, but I really liked the ending of this book, even though I know a lot of people didn't. I think part of that is that when I read this book, I already had Chain of Thorns to pick up and continue on. I did not have to wait that excruciating 2 years that everybody else had to wait after the end of this. So I actually was like living for the ending of this book. I really liked it. So then, of course, I immediately picked up Chain of Thorns to also binge this one. Oh my gosh, it's so large. How do I even hold this? She's so thick. Honestly, initially, I gave this book 5 stars. And then upon thinking about it further, upon letting it simmer, I ended up knocking it down to 4 stars just because I don't feel that this is nearly as strong as the other 2 books in the series or as strong as any book in the Infernal Devices series. There were just some plot holes in this story. There were some conveniences that were going on. Just the pacing felt a little bit funky. So it wasn't like absolutely perfect, but I still gave it 4 stars. I still absolutely had such a blast reading this book, figuring out what happened to our characters. I'm just super invested in these characters, so I definitely like blew through this to figure out how things were gonna end for them. An added element to this book that made it so fun for me to read was the illustrations that are throughout it. There's one I can't show you because it's spoilery, but there is one of the Merry Thieves. If you have read this, you know which one I'm talking about, and I just cannot. It's the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Like the art is just so good. So the art honestly like added so much to the story. If you are planning to read these and can get your hands on this collector's first edition that has the artwork in it, I really think it enhances the story a lot, so I highly recommend that if you can. However, do not flip through them before you read it because you will spoil yourself on stuff. They are spoilery for sure. That's why I'm not going to show them to you. But yes, I really enjoyed this one. It was not nearly as sad and like gut-wrenching as I expected it to be. I cried a little bit, but it didn't get my emotions the way the Infernal Devices did, and I just don't think I felt quite as connected to these characters. There are so many characters in this series compared to the Infernal Devices that I just don't know if we had enough time with them to get as connected as we do to the other characters. And I mean, who can top Will and Jem? I don't know. I freaking love Matthew. I loved Cordelia and Alistair. I did really enjoy the incorporation of Persian culture in this series. Our main character is a Persian shadow hunter, and because that is not my culture, I was not totally sure if what we were getting was fully accurate and representative of the culture, so I did end up watching some videos from the Clockwork Reader, who is a Persian YouTuber, booktuber who loves Cassandra Clare. So I watched her videos talking about this series, and I highly recommend that if you are interested in hearing from the perspective of someone who comes from a Persian family. Watching her videos talking about the culture in the book was really, really cool for me, and I had a lot of fun hearing her chat about that and just what it meant to her as a reader to see herself represented in such a popular series that she loves so much. So that was super cool. So I definitely got invested enough in these books that I was like watching booktube videos about it, wanting to hear what other people had to think, and I did really, really enjoy it. Just not quite as much. The plot just wasn't quite there in this one, and that is why I ended up getting a 4-star for me. Then I crashed from binging that series and ended up in a massive, massive, massive reading slump. I just like, I don't know, you're on the high of the Shadowhunters world, and I just came down super hard and did not want to read. I did not want to pick anything up. I didn't want to listen to anything. I just was not into it because I'm so involved in the book community. I kind of have this pressure that I put on myself to, you know, be reading, to have books to talk to you guys about in this wrap-up video. So I think I put a little bit too much pressure on myself this month to continue reading, even when I wasn't fully in the mood for reading. So some of these next books are a bit of a bummer because I didn't enjoy them as much as I probably could have had I not forced myself to read them while I was in a reading slump. So the first one that I forced myself to read during this reading slump was The Mysteries of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. This is the little novella that comes after Sorcery of Thorns. It recently released, and I was like, you know what? The audiobook is so short. Like, this will be a great thing to listen to during my reading slump because I'll just get through it super quickly. It took me forever to get through this tiny, tiny audiobook because I just wasn't in the mood, and so I feel that I could have enjoyed it a lot more had I read it when I was in a different mood. I think I still ended up giving it a 4 stars just because I knew that, like, I was the problem. I was the reason it was taking so long to get through it. I did really enjoy like revisiting our characters. It was super fun, super cozy, just like a sweet little kind of romance novella after the events of that book. It's also been a minute since I read Sorcery of Thorns, so I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but I just thought it was cute, cozy, wintry, and I had fun listening to it. I just wish I didn't make myself listen to it when I did. Next up is a book that I'm actually so angry with myself for pushing through during this reading slump because it was one of my like most highly anticipated reads. I was so looking forward to getting to this book, and I think I kind of ruined my own reading experience by making myself read it when I was not in a reading mood, and that is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. You guys, I loved Ninth House. It was kind of my introduction to the dark academia genre, and I loved it so much. I loved the incorporation of like mystery with that paranormal fantasy, the dark academia setting. I just like had a blast with Ninth House, and I could not wait for Hellbent. I've been waiting for it for a long time. I think I read Ninth House like a 1.5 years ago, and you guys, I just like forced myself to read it at a terrible time. It took me a super long time to get through it. I did it pretty much all on audio, and it took me forever to get through because I just was not in the mood for reading. So I'm really, really frustrated with myself. You guys, this series is so good. I gave it 4 stars because I knew that I was the problem. Like, again, this was a me problem. This was not the book's fault that it took me for freaking ever to read an amazing freaking series that I was so excited for. I will say that I think even had I read this not in a slump, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much as Ninth House. Like, Ninth House, in my opinion, is better than this. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I just liked Ninth House more. This was still so good though. It's such an interesting story. We get to know our characters even better. But anyways, this series is a dark academia story. We follow our main character, Alex Stern, who is the sole survivor of a multiple homicide, super horrible situation. And when she's in the hospital recovering from this, she is approached and offered the chance to go to Yale full ride if she will come work for this society that kind of monitors the occult, slightly paranormal activities of the other 8 secret societies on the Yale campus. So Alex goes off to Yale and joins this like paranormal underworld. She also has powers to be able to see ghosts and interact with them, which is why she was chosen and given this opportunity despite not really being qualified to go to Yale at all. But she ends up here in these strange circumstances because of her powers. I love this series. I'm still gonna continue reading it. I'm still hooked. I may even give this one a reread in the fall. We'll see. I would like to give it a reread in the fall and just give it its due because I feel like I totally just did not give it what it was worth because I read it at a time when I wasn't wanting to read anything. And this was not the type of book to pull you out of a reading slump. This is not it. This is a dense, dark academia, adult, paranormal. This was not the right thing to be reading when I was in a slump. So bummer that I didn't get as much enjoyment from it as I could have, but I still, like, once I got to the ending, got really into it and was really excited to see what went down. So that is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, 4 stars from me. Next, I finally actually picked something that I thought would be helpful for my reading slump. This is the series that I was reading in the video that I made. So you may have already seen me chat about this a little bit, but I decided that what I needed to get out of a slump was a good old fantasy romance. So I picked up The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. This book I ended up giving a 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. This one was fast-paced, pretty easy to follow, and just like the right thing that I needed to get into to get out of my reading slump. It was full of tropes. It was very romance heavy. It was a little bit spicy, which is not my thing, but this was just the perfect, like, fast-paced, light, even though it's political and there's war and there's high stakes, it's about the romance. Okay, it is. So it was just the like light read that I needed to get out of my slump. So Laura is a princess and her father has been raising her for her entire life to become a spy so that she can marry the king of this neighboring kingdom who has a lot of power in like trade. The kingdom is a chain of islands connected by this fortress called the Bridge, and they have control of basically all trade. And so Lara's father is like, you're gonna go marry the king of the Bridge Kingdom, you're gonna spy on him, you're gonna tell me how to take him down, take control of his kingdom, take control of trade in our world. That's what's gonna happen. He's been, you know, making things too expensive, our people are starving, and it's all his fault. So you're gonna go do this, and I'm gonna take him down. And Lara's like, yes, my people, I don't want them to be starving, I wanna take care of them. So she goes off to marry this evil king of the Bridge Kingdom and spy on him and figure out how her father can come in and invade. However, while she is there, she starts to get to know her husband and his people and starts to realize maybe he's not the evil guy that my dad told me he was. Maybe there's a little bit more going on here and different reasons why my people are starving. Of course, enemies to lovers, she falls in love with him. Lots of other things happen, there's war, but it is about their romance, of her kind of unlearning these things that her father has taught her that are lies and realizing that his kingdom and his people are worth saving just as much as hers are. So it is a really sweet story of like her getting her eyes opened to the world. It is like silly, like the jokes, some of them are painful. It is like a little bit ridiculous. It is what it is. It's just a fun, light, silly read. And it's very, very tropey. It's not super original. Like it felt like a lot of things I've read before, but it was super fun for what it was. I kind of knew that going into it. And I think if you're just looking for like a light, quick, easy fantasy read with some romance or a lot of romance, you should try The Bridge Kingdom. So I also read the sequel, The Traitor Queen, right afterwards. And this one I actually liked even more than the first one. I just really enjoyed like the different dynamic that we have between them in this book because of the things that happened at the end of The Bridge Kingdom. There is a very different dynamic between our two main characters. The romance shifts in a different way, and I really enjoyed this one. Again, it's like not a masterpiece in my opinion, but super, super fun. If you are a fan of the fantasy romance genre and haven't yet picked up this series, I'm guessing you probably have because I don't read that much fantasy romance. So if you're into the genre, you've probably read a lot more than I have. But if you've not and are interested, I think this series is super fun, and there is spin-off books as well. So I will at some point pick up The Inadequate Heir because I am interested in enough to continue on. So once my reading slump was broken by The Bridge Kingdom and The Traitor Queen, I was able to read 2 more books in the end of the month very quickly, right? Squeezing them in at the end, but my slump was finally broken and I was ready to just blow through some audiobooks. And I have read only fantasy this year so far, up to this point. So I shifted gears and ended up picking up 2 mysteries to end out the month, just kind of fast, fun mysteries to read. The first one was Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun by Elle Cosimano. This is the 3rd book in the Finlay Donovan series, which is such a fun ride. If you have not read these, I highly recommend them. I think they're a hoot. They're just like the most ridiculous. They're so funny. But in this series, we follow Finlay Donovan, who is a single mom. She's got 2 little kids. She is struggling for money, trying to make ends meet as an author. She writes mystery novels, and one day she is at Panera Bread, sitting chatting with her agent about her next book that she's writing, and somehow the woman at the table next to her overhears parts of her conversation and misunderstands and thinks that Finlay is a hit woman. So this woman at the table next to her decides to hire her to kill her husband. Finlay, hurting for money, kind of accidentally takes the job and becomes a hit woman by accident. So this series is just like full of hijinks, full of like the most ridiculous, like outlandish plot things. It's so silly and light and funny, but it's also like full of murder. It's so fun, you guys. I like really, really enjoy this series. I thought the 3rd one was gonna be the last one, but it's definitely not over. I did enjoy the 3rd one. However, I do think I liked the 1st one and 2nd one more. I don't know. It's been a minute. I can't even remember what I rated the 1st and 2nd ones, but I gave the 3rd one a 4. I thought it was super fun. I really enjoy these characters. So I'm just gonna have a blast with like the humor and the way that it's written anyways, but there were some things about the plot that were a little bit slower. I thought this one was super fun, and if any of that like storyline ridiculousness appeals to you, I highly recommend this series. It starts with the 1st one, Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano, and the book that I read and gave 4 stars this month is Finlay Donovan Jumps the Gun. Ridiculous and addictive. There we go. That's the Finlay Donovan series for you. Then I was kind of on a mystery kick from reading that one. I had a really fun time with it, blew through it really quickly. So I ended up deciding to also read 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson. This is the 4th or 5th book in the Truly Devious series. So there's like the original trilogy, Truly Devious, which is a YA mystery series about a young girl named Stevie Bell who is obsessed with true crime and ends up going to this academy called Ellingham Academy for the kind of like talented and gifted, I suppose. This school takes kids who have like a passion, Like, you have your thing that you are obsessed with, whether that be like engineering and robotics. There's a guy who writes a book. There's a guy who makes YouTube videos. They have like their thing. And so Stevie goes there and her thing is solving mysteries, and she wants to solve the Ellingham Academy mystery. This school was started by a man who had just tons of money. He wanted to start this kind of like idyllic academy for students to go to for free to study their passions. And when he did this, he like got the school going, and then there was a tragic event where his wife and daughter both died, I think, or disappeared. Anyways, there's like this big mystery that was kind of never solved around this guy and his family and what happened to them. And so Stevie goes to the school to try and solve that mystery. That's what the original trilogy is about. Then there are two other books. We have The Box in the Woods, which I've read, and then 9 Liars, which is the newest one. This one follows her in her senior year at the school. So following her and her friends still, and they go to London, and there's another mystery to solve. And I thought I was going to like this one. I was enjoying listening to it. However, by the end, it just felt like the end happened way too quickly. The mystery was not the main focus. Like, the main focus was just teenage adolescent drama, I suppose. And the mystery was really like on the back burner. And then by the time the mystery was like wrapped up at the end, it felt like very convenient. It didn't feel like Stevie would have actually really solved it that way. It didn't really feel like the mystery made all that much sense to begin with. The mystery was just very weak, and that's why I read these stories. So it ended up getting a 2.5 stars from me. Even though I thought I was gonna like it, I was like reading it very quickly. I think I listened to the audiobook in like a day or two, but the mystery was just like really flat. It was really not that awesome. So I ended up giving it a 2.5 stars. So bummer way to end the month, but as you heard at the beginning of this video, I started March with House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. So buckle up for when I talk about that eventually, because I have thoughts and feelings, and I'm still processing them because I literally just finished it today. But anyways, that is not relevant to this video. I read 8 books in February, a bummer month because of my reading slump and just because I didn't enjoy some of the books as much as I feel like I could have had I not been in a reading slump. So hopefully March will do better for me. We started off with a big one, started off with House of Sky and Breath, and I have a lot of other plans for things to read in March that I am really hopeful about. So I hope you will stick around and chat with me about those as well. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite book that you read in February. I think I'm gonna have to go with Chain of Iron, the very first book I read in the month. I loved it so much. So Chain of Iron is gonna be my favorite book of February. Let me know yours in the comments, or any thoughts that you have about any of the books that I chatted about today. I would love to talk to you about them if you have read them as well. If we have the same thoughts, if we have super different thoughts, let me know. I'm very, very curious. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I will catch you all in my next video. Bye, friends.